Jester hat. You get it? Harley Quinn. Jester. This is coming off. I actually bought that Jester's hat from Goodwill when I worked at Goodwill because it was red and black, and I figured I can try to turn it into something for a Harley Quinn cosplay. Haven't gotten that far yet. That was several years ago. Sewing is not my strong suit. Today is going to be the next one of the Wizard King discussion videos. Today I'm going to be talking about Jester Garandros. Garandros. Jester. He's Jester. He is the 16th Wizard King of the Clover Kingdom and the Magic Knights. Generally, the way that he was depicted in the Black Clover movie, the Sword of the Wizard King, is he generally just seems to give off very mad jester vibes, in all honesty, and it works. That is the vibe that he gives off. Throughout the course of this video, when I'm discussing his backstory, we'll get a little bit more information as to, why he is this way and stuff like that, or a little bit more of why that part of his personality developed more. For the time frame, Jester is about 23 years old, and that was the age that he was when he died. And him and Princia both died at rather young ages. Then again, as with Princia, you can guess he has a bit of a tragic backstory in regards to how that works and how that affected his reign as Wizard King. So, in regards to his history, first of all, information in this is coming from the Sword of the Wizard King movie, and also the additional volume that was released with in conjunction with the movie that had information about the different Wizard King characters that were introduced in the movie. If I remember correctly, at least with Princia and with Edward, we at least get some flashes of their past, but we don't really get that with Jester as far as I can remember from the movie. But Jester's backstory is that he was born into a noble family, growing up privileged and without any hardships, so probably pretty similar to how the Silva siblings were raised and stuff like that, and several of the other ones that we've seen that are royal children or noble-born children that are, become Magic Knights later on. Due to his exceptional amount of talent in magic, Jester became a Magic Knight, and, pretty much explains itself pretty similar to how the other ones all become Magic Knights. From there, he befriended another knight named Tenor, who came from a remote village near the Diamond Kingdom, as well as a knight named Raid, who came from the Common Realm. So, again, we're kind of getting this mix. I know at times in Black Clover, throughout the course of the anime, the manga, it is implied that it is very rare for anyone who is not noble-born or at least high-born enough, at least from like a wealthy family or something, to become a member of the Magic Knights. So this is implying that, yes, there have been other low-born ones from the Common Realm and stuff like that that have managed to become Magic Knights. Which makes sense. I mean, all throughout history, okay, so, example, the week that I'm recording this, the weekend before this, I watched Hamilton on Disney Plus. Twice. Mostly because my sister and her kids went and saw it at, saw the live musical version at, our local, the Leeds Center, which is here in town, which is where I've gone to see the Danny Elfman music performed. They went to that. And then I ended up watching it, A, with my dad, and then B, with my mom, because they are divorced. And It's just really fun to watch, and it's just really fun. I was like, yes, I'm happy to watch it again another day. But in that, they keep talking about having a war, because that's kind of one of the only ways that people who are orphans, or people, or men generally who are orphans, or who are very, low born within society, have the ability to raise up in society. That is kind of also applied here when it comes to the Magic Knights, and the fact that, commoners, people from the common realm, can become Magic Knights, and they can rise through the ranks. We see Asta do this, and do this, and Magna, and a bunch of the others that are members of the Black Bulls. And to a degree, it's implied that some of the ones that are in some of the other squads, probably more likely the Green Mantises and the Purple Orcas, and maybe a few others, not necessarily like the Golden Dawn and the Silver Eagles, given how they react to things. But having a bunch of these, low-born, common-born people rise through the ranks. And then they can gain status that way. Possibly even be, brought up to noble status if they manage to marry into a noble family. But what ended up happening with Jester is that, strangely, despite there being, different social statuses among the three knights, they actually got along very, very well and became very close friends. Jester and Tenor and Raid became very good friends, and they would push each other to improve together. So kind of the way that the Black Bulls push each other to get stronger, and the other magical knights all push each other to get stronger as well, because it is good for them as a team, and it is good for them as individuals. And so they would push each other and get stronger and everything. After some time, Jester became a Magic Knight's captain. We do not know the name of his squad that he became the captain of, but he became a captain of one of the squads. He could have been a previous incarnation of one of the squads that is currently around, or he could have made his own squad, because maybe another squad, took over another squad and made it his own. We're not sure. It's not explained. But he became a Magic Knight captain. And coming at the same time as his friend Tenor's village was attacked by the Diamond Kingdom. Now, as we've had previously established in the series, the Diamond Kingdom and the Clover Kingdom don't always get along. Given current events that have happened, that may have been a little bit more shifted, where maybe they can start getting along a bit better. I would actually... Side note here, I would actually like it if, like, the Diamond Kingdom showed up and tried to help fight against Lucius and all of his paladins. That would be kind of interesting, just to see how much stronger they've all gotten. Just to see how much stronger the Diamond Kingdom and their ranks have gotten. That would be kind of nice. I don't expect that to happen, but that would be nice to happen. Or possibly by the time this goes up, that may have happened. I don't know. We'll see how prophetic I am. And that, so their village, Tenor's village, gets attacked. And although Jester and the other two want to go and help to try to protect the village, they can't, because at that time that would look upon as the actions of the Clover Kingdom, sending its forces to the border to then be seen as an act of war toward the Diamond Kingdom. Now, the fact that they imply that means that possibly that Tenor's village is not necessarily within the realm of the Clover Kingdom, that it's just on the border. Because, in very recent years and in very recent months, we've seen the concept of, like, if troops start amassing at a border of one country near another country, particularly if they are not necessarily allies, that's not necessarily seen as a good thing. But going to defend a village that is the home of one of the Magic Knights does not seem like it would be a bad thing, but political things. Also, nobles with their heads up their butt. However, the Clover Kingdom did not want to risk going to war against the Diamond Kingdom and forbade the knights from interfering. However, Jester and his friends, so Tenor and Raid, they go to the village. Probably some of the other members of the Magic Knights that serve under Jester may have gone with them as well. They go to the village and they attempt to try to save it. They are successful, however, Tenor ends up dying as a result of trying to protect his home. And at the loss of his friend, this just pushes Jester even more to climb the ranks, and eventually he becomes the Wizard King. So kind of a similar thing that we saw when it came to Princia, the fact that, she wanted to protect people, and she climbs the ranks and everything, although it seems a little bit more like Princia was somewhat handed the title of Wizard King, as opposed to Jester, who's like climbs the ranks and kind of like takes it for his own. And so he becomes the Wizard King, so that way he could prevent this type of an incident from ever happening again. And after achieving success as a captain and then later the Wizard King, he, becomes a Wizard King, and he stays a Wizard King for several years. However, Tenor's village does end up being attacked again, and Jester personally went to deal with the situation because he's the Wizard King. He can make that decision, and he can go and do that. He arrives at the village and is shocked to learn that the attack on the village was actually an elaborate trap, which was set up by his other friend, Raid. Jester is very confused by this. He's like, but I thought we were friends, and you were friends with Tenor, and what's going on here? And it is revealed that Raid is actually kind of like an undercover agent, spy for the Diamond Kingdom the entire time. And that he was sent to, spy and gather intel and everything like that. General stuff that spies are supposed to do. And that he was ordered to assassinate Jester. Since he has this connection with Jester, who is the Wizard King, it would make sense to then have him try to assassinate him. Good political espionage there. I at least gotta hand him that. And in spite of this betrayal, Jester cannot bring himself to kill his friend. He cannot bring himself to kill Raid. He still sees him as his friend, and he can't bring himself to harm him. Unfortunately, ultimately, this does result in the start and the end of the attack on the village, and he unfortunately, Jester is forced to, to protect the village of his other oldest friend, who is now passed. He then has to kill his other friend, who is his other oldest friend, who is revealed to be a spy and a traitor and, someone he thought he could trust, and apparently he couldn't. And that would be a very hard thing to do, where it's just like, okay, I have to protect this village, I have to kill my friend. Oh, God. That's not a decision you want to make, nor is it a decision you want to make lightly. And hopefully not a decision any of you ever have to be forced to make. Later on, Jester would begin to blame the loss of his friends on the corrupt state of the opposing kingdoms of both the Diamond Kingdom and the Clover Kingdom, which is a fair assessment. And that the wars had already begun to wage between the two kingdoms. In an attempt to solve this issue, Jester decides that the only way to end the wars between the 4 remaining kingdoms was to rule all 4 kingdoms. So this would be the Clover Kingdom, Diamond Kingdom, Spade Kingdom, and Heart Kingdom. So, the whole big map that we are aware of. Admittedly, this would have been, nobody that we know currently would have been alive at this point in time, except maybe like the Witch Queen or whatever, who's probably just off in the witch's forest, like, this has nothing to do with me. Type of a thing. And, he decides, okay, I'm just going to rule over all 4 kingdoms, and then they won't have a reason to fight each other, because they'll all be the same kingdom. And he begins, known as the Conquest, and this setup becomes the Conquest of the 4 Kingdoms campaign. And which gained some support from some, but unfortunately led others to officially view Jester as a Mad King, which is kind of the persona that we see throughout the course of the actual movie, where we actually see, just like him laughing maniacally and just smiling, unhinged and everything like that. And that's kind of, that's the essence that he gives off during the movie. Despite his plan, Jester continues to gain support, because there would be people within each of the different kingdoms who would be like, well, I really don't want to go to war with the other kingdoms anymore, and if this can be a way of ending all of these stupid wars, then maybe that would be a good thing. So you can see why some people would be wanting to do that. And they would, become, start to form under his banner. And unfortunately, he was beginning to foster growing peace between the warring kingdoms and everything in the villages and territories affected by these wars. Because the ones that would be the border villages and stuff like that would probably be the ones most likely to want to end these wars as quick as possible, because they're the main ones that are getting slaughtered or taken captive or whatever you want to put. So, that was his, he starts, to gather and rally support and everything like that. However, Jester's growing influence greatly upsets the royals of the Clover Kingdom, as has happened with Princia, as has happened to a degree with Lumiere, as will probably happen with Edward and Conrad when I get to them in the next two videos for this, also to a degree with Julius and everything, that they do not like this concept, because it's like, if all the kingdoms are together, then they don't necessarily have a reason to be able to go and fight against another kingdom and take their land if they want. Because reasons. And so they set up a trap to get rid of him once and for all. In the process of creating a unified world of peace, Jester ultimately lost his life before even completing his goal, which we pretty much could assume. And then, when he's resurrected, so many hundreds of years later, when he is resurrected by Conrad Leto, him, Princia, and Edward are all resurrected by the use of Conrad's wizard key magic and the Wizard King's sword, and all of that. They are all resurrected, as is explained by, I think, one of the other characters. I don't remember if it's Secker or not, but it's explained that all of the three Wizard Kings that he resurrected, that Conrad resurrected, that all of them were all ones who had been deposed by the royals of that time, by the nobles and the royals of that time, which generally would lead you to believe that, oh, they became like tyrannical rulers. No. Two of the three so far that I've gone over have not had that. They were not tyrannical rulers. They unfortunately made decisions that unfortunately pissed off the ruling royals and nobles at the time. But there's always been, military leaders and stuff like that have made those decisions where they anger whoever's in charge. Sometimes it's actually for the betterment of the people that they make them angry, and they actually turn against the ruler because the ruler has become far too corrupt. Lots of military coups have happened that way, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. It all just depends on certain aspects and what side you're on. And, so we were led to believe as an audience initially that, oh, it was because they were corrupt. But if they would been corrupt, then how did they become the Wizard King to begin with? Yes, the Wizard King is generally like the strongest wizard there is within the kingdom, within the Clover Kingdom. But if you're tyrannical and everything, then you're not going to really be popular enough to want people to have you become the Wizard King. And popularity is partially based on, becoming the Wizard King is partially based on your popularity with the people as well, along with the popularity of yourself among the Magic Knights. So that would make sense. But the fact that it's just like, oh, they were tyrannical, it's just like, no, I'm believing that less and less at this point in time. And such. And they all had different reasons for why they wanted to literally uproot the Clover Kingdom and make it better, which is why they had similar goals to Conrad and such. So they are resurrected, and they end up, between themselves and Conrad, they end up attacking the different magical knights and everything, and eventually end up Leto's power, or not Leto's power, Jester's power is kind of used to help turn the giant flying stadium fortress and make it fly and help with that, and then also just like cover it in giant protection shields, which pretty much Jester's power, which I haven't really touched on yet. Jester's power is called barrier magic, and it basically works the way that like the protect shield does in Pokemon. Because like when I saw it activate for the first time, I'm like, I am remembered of the protect shields that are in Pokemon Go and that pop up in the games and stuff like that. And which is very evident to what it's very similar to, or comparing to. And he is able to not just create these barriers all around himself and his allies and, you know, large amounts of area, since he's also being powered by the Wizard King sword. He is also able to use these barriers to attack, which makes perfect sense. I mean, like, there's still a barrier, even if you're, you know, dividing it up into pieces and turning it into a sword or, you know, shards or something and attacking someone with it. That is also, like, this part of being the Wizard King is that you learn how to maximize what your powers can do. Being able to have huge amounts of shields is very useful, but if all you can do is defend, yes, you can outlast people for a while, but, you know, sometimes you have to be able to attack as well, and being able to use your barriers to, as I said, form swords or other types of, you know, weapons that you can attack with is a very good way of doing it, and that seems to be what Jester has managed to be able to do. Or if a barrier gets destroyed, he can then turn the shards of the barrier into an attack by then, you know, launching them at the enemy. We see him do this several times throughout the different battles that he is a part of. As they end up, you know, as, you know, all the, you know, the three resurrected Wizard Kings and Conrad all work together. They, you know, corral the people of the Clover Kingdom and start draining all of their power away. They deal with the different, you know, Latostas group when they return and start fighting against them and everything. And it is actually Jester who figures out where, like, because part of one of the things they need to find are like the mana veins or like the ley lines that, you know, traverse all over the Clover Kingdom. And Jester is the one that figures it out where they are, and it's like, oh, well, it's under the giant skull of, you know, the giant, you know, devil thing that the first Wizard King destroyed. It's under there, which makes perfect sense. So that's what he tells Conrad. And eventually what ends up happening is, of course, the fight that Jester ends up having is against Yuno, along with Yami, Fergolion, and Nozel helping him along. And so basically what happens is, you know, Jester, when the Black Bulls show up for the big fight, the Black Bulls plus all the other miscellaneous magical knights that are there, when they show up for the fight, they have to get through Jester's barrier magic, which they are able to do eventually. And then, you know, fighting against Jester ends up actually releasing what look like random attacks that hit throughout the different fortress. And that results in, you know, Yami, Nozel, and Fergolion getting released, and then they are able to help, you know, fight against, you know, Jester. And the, you know, the fight goes back and forth, and it's a little bit similar to what happens with Princia versus Marileona, where it's just like, you know, Yuno seems to get knocked down and he gets back up again and, you know, is able to fight Jester, and Jester gets knocked down and then he just, you know, powers up again and looks a little bit even more psychotic as he maximizes his barrier powers even more and everything. And eventually in the fight, Jester is actually quite impressed with Yuno. And he's like, oh, if you'd been around during my time, I would have made you an advisor because you're quite powerful and you're quite clever with how you use your attacks and everything. So I would have made you an advisor had you been around in my time. Which, I mean, you know, whether or not you're fighting against someone, if someone's complimenting you on how you use your magic, I would, you know, it's just like, take the compliment where you can get it. Depends on why they're complimenting you, but generally take the compliment where you can get it. Because even like enemies will compliment each other at times. It's just like, that was a wonderful strategy, or you almost had me, or, you know, different things like that, or that was a very interesting technique you used, or things like that. And, you know, Yuno is, you know, getting pushed to the edge, and he's using his different, you know, all of his different powers and everything, and he ends up kind of having it where he gets where Yami, Nozel, and Fragolion all kind of have to like work together to form an attack, and helps with that, and they are able to eventually put Jester to a standstill to a degree. And it happens to line up when Asta is able to, kind of negate the power of the Wizard King's sword, which was what was feeding power to Princia and Edward and Jester. And because that power has been disrupted, canceled out, Jester then starts to, fade the way that Princia and Edward do. He starts to fade because, you interrupt the power source and he can't be there anymore. You use up whatever power you had. And he starts to fade, and I think he's like, and just when it was starting to get fun and everything, and he just, fades into pieces. And the last bit that we see of him is when, Conrad is kind of dying, and we see Jester and Princia and Edward all kind of like with, constellations, silhouettes, and everything like that. And we see Jester there and everything. And, then they all just kind of fade away. By technicality, just like with the other Wizard Kings, a piece of him still technically survived within the Wizard King sword. As I've stated, it is to a degree a Horcrux with multiple personality disorder, because you can, connect with the different Wizard Kings if you're using the sword. So there's that. In regard to his magic, as I said, he has barrier magic, which just allows him to create barriers and construct weapons out of, construct the weapons out of the barriers or so. He can use it to surround his body or certain locations or certain objects or so with his power. He can also handle even dimensional cutting spells, because I think he ends up like taking a hit from Yami when he uses his like dark dimension slash. The different attacks that we see him used are his Voodoo Shangri-La, which is kind of the first thing that we see him use, where he makes just giant barrier just appear around the stadium where they're having this, Wizard Night competition. Magic Night competition, excuse me, where it just covers the entire, building and everything like that, and it makes it harder for everybody to escape. And as I said, it looks like, because it's like just like hexagons all over the place, forming together, and it's like, it looks like it's just like a giant overpowered version of Protect from Pokemon. Then he also has his Voodoo Regalia, which is where the barrier pieces form into like swords or other types of weapons, knives and stabbing weapons, and then he's able to use those to then attack his opponent. So he probably has, swordman skills and everything like that, but also it's just like they're able to move by his control, just like, other types of weapons that are summoned by, like, when Nozel makes, a weapon out of his, metal, it is able to then attack on its own as it's directed by him. Jester also has, like, this unnamed laser cannon construct that he uses at one point against, the Black Bull's fortress, I believe, when it first shows up, or he's trying to use it against, one of the two. And I would assume that's just kind of like focusing the power through the barriers because they can act like lenses and stuff like that. Again, finding ways to maximize what your power is capable of. He also has Voodoo Kingdom, which I'm pretty sure is just like his version of like Monozone, just to, enhance his power even more on the battlefield. Abilities, of course, just like the other Wizard Kings, he has immense magical power, and he has swordsmanship and master swordsman, because he's able to go toe to toe with Yami several times. His grimoire is kind of cool looking. There's not really too much else here about him. As I stated, he's kind of the one that seems the most unhinged out of the different Wizard Kings that we see, because Princia is fairly, calm for the most part until she starts going up against Marileona and actually starts having fun in the fight. Edward, he's, again, very calm and, reserved and everything like that, but I'll get to him in the next video when I get to these. But Jester is kind of the one that seemed a little bit unhinged for the most part. Not that Conrad doesn't get unhinged at various points in time as well throughout the course of the movie, but Jester is the one that just seems unhinged the entire time. And like he's just having a lot of fun. Which, again, 3 of them have been dead for several hundred years to a degree, so they've probably not had a lot of fun for that amount of time, depending on how that works. And also, I had the Jester hat, and I have, my Harley Quinn shirt here, joke fiction with Harley and everything. With Harley being a jester and everything like that. I don't know, Jester from Black Clover and Harley might get along a little bit, but I don't think Jester and Joker would get along. Mostly because Joker is psychotic and evil. And Jester does not quite seem to be that. A little bit psychotic at times, but given things that have happened to him in his backstory, that's not surprising. Yeah, that's what I have there for Jester. I thank you for watching. The next one will be about Edward Avalanche. One thing I wanted to make note of here at the end that I kind of forgot to point out at the beginning of the video. Since we do not know the exact dates that all the different Wizard Kings, were born and died, and when exactly they were the Wizard King and everything like that, because both Jester and Princia were both quite young when they were the Wizard Kings, whereas Edward seems to be much on the older side, or at the very least like middle-aged, and then Conrad and Julius don't seem to be exceedingly old either. So it's like, okay, well, how exactly did all of that play out? When were all of them alive? Was Jester aware of Princia? Like, was she a Wizard King at some point in time when he was a kid? Had he heard stories of her? And vice versa, was Jester like something that like Edward knew about, at that point in time? Admittedly, there may have been some Wizard Kings that were Wizard Kings, or, the Queen version, that would have been Wizard King and held that position for possibly a good number of years, because Julius has been Wizard King for like 10 years, if not longer than that. So it's like not super over the top thinking that some of them could have been Wizard Kings for 10, 20, 30 years, depending on how long they were able to hold on to that power and how long they were able to like continue to curry favor with the royals and the nobles of the time. And the royals and the nobles seem to have at least gotten somewhat better since then. In certain cases, we'll go over that when I get to Edward in a bit more detail. But that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.